Let me address for a moment the question of police manpower. As the citizens relinquish out of fear more of their rights, more enforcers are required to regulate and supervise the people's activities so that they remain safe and peaceful. Who would have thought 100 years ago that the integration of fear of literally everything would have been the answer to establishing the New World Order? Credit for this innovation goes to the free thinkers of the last generation. And folks, if you think he's wrong, just look at yourselves. Look what you put up with. Look what you've allowed to happen. Look at the state our nation is in. Look at the fact that we've already lost most of the Bill of Rights, the portion of the Constitution known as the first 10 Amendments. You all file and pay income taxes which you are not required to file or pay. You do everything out of fear. And that's why you're known as the sheeple. Most of you. Not all, but most, without any doubt. Most of you, that title fits like a handmade pair of Italian shoes. It's very comfortable, isn't it? Isn't it? Now the older generation, known as peace officers, servants of the people, might not so readily have adopted nor fit into this new order of things. Fortunately, this has not posed too great a problem due to the fact that they are rapidly being replaced through natural attrition, in effect, death or retirement. And now Hillary's running around the country, folks, wants to open a dialogue on euthanasia. Timely, isn't it? I continue. The next 7 to 8 years will see the last of them removed. At the same time, police agencies are of necessity attempting more and more to screen out before hiring those prospective officers who believe in the old religious superstitions. This is wise because these zealots will not do the things that will be required of them under the new system. Those remaining police officers who openly profess a belief system steeped on old-world religious fundamentalism can be and are being phased out on any number of charges such as can be substantiated over time or with the help of a little innovation on the part of new management. And we believe that this organization, Aid and Abet, may be the organ used to identify those police officers. I continue. Before I continue, I better clarify, folks. We believe that, and we have good grounds for our belief. However, we cannot prove it. You must make up your own mind, yourselves. I continue. Some of these old-time officers complain that this type of job discrimination is unconstitutional and immoral. But we know they are wrong. Under situation ethics, all things are moral as long as they promote the goal. Therefore, they are not being removed for any evil cause. They are incompatible and simply non-functional for the duties that will be required of them. You might ask yourself, ladies and gentlemen, what are the duties that will be required of them? I think you've already seen some examples at Ruby Ridge and Waco, Texas, and many other places. And I go on with the letter. I feel I need to say again that if a professional police officer must lie against those who violate the law, then it is moral. The same is true when government judges and attorneys withhold evidence and witnesses from the jury to win their cases. When a politician lies to win an office or makes deals that promote the new order, it is moral. Let me tell you what is truly immoral. I will use the issuance of traffic citations as only one example. True immorality is when 5 out of 10 good upstanding citizens take the witness stand, swear an oath to their God, and then proceed to fabricate lies to get out of their tickets. This our enforcement officers witness daily in court. To them, this is not only immoral, but highly hypocritical. The enforcer's dishonesty helps society as a whole. If a government agent lied for personal reasons, then it would be immoral. If done for the betterment of mankind, it is not. And that is the most important lesson I bring you today. It is one thing when a leader or agent of government has to lie or otherwise deceives his subjects. It is quite another when an ordinary individual from among the masses, quote, bites the hand that feeds him, unquote, by lying to those who are bringing salvation in this brave new world. Do we see this important difference? The old world understood that it was the greatest of sins to lie or to deceive God. The generations of devotees that wish to enter the new world must likewise be brought to the understanding that it is the greatest of sins to lie to deceive their new God government. Any such disloyalty would surely hamper the progress of those engaged in ushering in the glorious new world order. We are not concerned with the few who may resist this new order, for out of pragmatic necessity their fate has been amply allowed for in the master plan. What we are most concerned about at present is that the obedient masses be made to understand that it is detrimental to progress for them to suggest that their supervisors wallow under the pressure and futility of the antiquated superstitions, morals, and dogma of the past. There will be some difficult changes facing the person entering this new society. On these issues, however, we can assure the people there will be no compromise. Thank you for listening. May the blessing of the new order come swiftly upon us. So mote it be. So mote it be is taken directly from the initiation ceremonies of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, and you will hear it nowhere else, ladies and gentlemen. Whoever wrote this was a highly degreed Freemason of the Scottish Rite, and he is, under a pseudonym, explaining the true purpose, the true religion, and the true plan for the religion that those who frequent the lodge actually adhere to. So you see, in Aid and Abet, a police newsletter, Volume 2, Number 1, all of the police officers who subscribe to this newsletter are the good guys. The good guys. They have been delivered a warning from a police chief under a pseudonym, which makes it very plain what will happen to any police officer who does not go along with the new world order. And I say that it was intentionally that way, and that there is no police chief, Rupert Orpheus, pseudonym or not, but this is the policy that needed to be explained to all of these officers at once to hasten their decision. You see, ladies and gentlemen, when it comes right down to it, most people will do what they're told, when they're told, if they're told, and they have been told. I hope that you are intelligent enough to understand what you have just heard and exactly what it means. If you are not, dear sheeple, God have mercy upon your soul. You're going to need it. Those long-time listeners to the hour of the time, those who have been awake for quite some time, those who were never asleep, understand that there is a plan in the world that the members of the secret societies, by whatever name they call themselves to you, the profane, in their exoteric language, are using to bring about the ages-old dream of a new world order, where the masses are totally and completely controlled for each and every second of every moment of every hour of every day of their lives, and where the priests of the mysteries govern in what they call a council of wise men. The public at large will not know much about this council of wise men, for there will be at the head of this council a charismatic religious and political leader. This is necessary, for the public needs somewhere to vent their emotions, their elations, their angers. And it will make no difference if they topple this leader from his throne. The real leaders will remain untouched, as they have remained untouched throughout the history of the world. Those of you who really believe that this hick, William Clinton, is leading this nation and making the decisions, you probably, at some point within the last 24 hours, thought you were Rush Limbaugh and set on half your brain. And those of you who believe that you really have a choice at election time, when the choice has already been made, and it's especially damaging if you believe that your vote really counts when it is the Electoral College that elects the president. And in fact, that's really not necessary unless some ringer slips into the choice, like Gary Hart. Didn't you wonder why Gary Hart was completely and totally destroyed forever because someone photographed him on a boat with one woman not doing anything wrong? And Bill Clinton is not even tarnished. Don't you understand? Bill Clinton is just a messenger boy. And if he gets impeached, it will not solve anything. And those of you running around signing petitions to impeach William Clinton had better read the Constitution of the United States of America. You see, you cannot impeach a president because somebody signed a petition. I don't care if 200 million Americans sign that petition. You cannot impeach William Clinton, you fools. You must prove that he has committed high crimes and misdemeanors. And you must have solid evidence. And you must have witnesses that don't die overnight. And documentation that doesn't disappear by the time next week comes along. Do you understand? Once again, they have you whirling around in circles at the end of a cul-de-sac. Good night, and God bless you all.
Back in the 90s, I talked about the system, the big system that runs the world, and through science and understanding of technique, which is used upon the public by, again, entertainment and news and authoritarian type newscasters and shows and things like that, how you're trained constantly. And as the system, and there is a system run by people who understand the system at the very top, because the world is vastly different from the way it's portrayed to the public. But this system often has to make changes to get other parts of its agenda through. And therefore, you find that things like morality are flexible in an advanced society. The moralities that we're given are the ones to suit the time for our masters, not for the people themselves. And it's the same with everything else too. Logic is another thing which is very malleable. Logic can be swayed. At least the conclusions that come out of logic can be swayed by depending on the information which is fed in and what you're given access to as well. But even when you find out that things make no sense according to what you're given to as fact or news or whatever it happens to be, how it's presented to you, even when you're given those ones, the reality doesn't quite mesh, often glaringly so, with the facts that you're given, then you know there's a big agenda at foot. And whatever facts come in to oppose it are going to be hammered mercilessly from the top and from all sections of particular agencies, societies, NGOs, etc., all on board with the same thing of bashing any other alternative to the story that the people are all told they must believe. And we find it more so today than any time in history for a long, long time. The big boys at the top literally have, and I'm not talking about your politicians, it's much bigger than them. Pretty well all politicians are compromised. That's why they're chosen. And you find even with the sex scandals in Britain and elsewhere, and even the squashing of investigations into them in some countries, you can tell right off the bat that these people are picked because they're compromised. Obviously. And therefore, they do what they're told by the powers above them that really own the world as far as they're concerned at the top. They own the world. And they do have this big plan, as I say, of using... You see, we're a little different from the sentient cattle you would find in nature. We are sentient cattle, different from the cattle you'll find in nature. And we tend to notice things. And we grumble a lot too, as we're chewing the cud. The cud is entertainment. And if things aren't just... we can go along with iffy logic. Oh, well, okay, and we go along with that. And as long as we can go along with it, just go along with it, the big boys can get away with murder, you might say. Actually, sometimes literally murder on lots and lots of people. But what I'm getting at here is the fact that everything's been planned because we're slightly sensitive or slightly sentient and aware. It's been planned that we must all start to believe in what we're told by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, with all of its associated universities that have been involved in incredible scandals over the years. And they can get away with that too because people's memories are so short. They forget all the scandals. They also forget that many of the people who are pushing this, who put forward to push it, and who are told to push it, by the way, because there's always a chain of command, they were the same people who were screaming about global cooling and the coming ice age in the 1960s. And howling how this socialist type technocracy must take control of all our lives to save the world. And now it's global warming, now they settle on climate change. And the whole thing has always been, it's all your fault. If there was no people on the planet, you'd have a deadpan climate all year round. How's that, eh? It's all your fault, this climate change. It's your fault that there might be heavy, heavy storms one year, and the next year not so many. You might get more rain one year and less the next, and it'll alternate here, because that's how it's always been. But no, it's your fault that happens. And this whole thing of the smear words we have today to shut people up are well understood and well known by the neuroscientists that come up with them all. Now they're calling them climate deniers. No one's denying you've got a climate, obviously. What they're really trying to get at is you're slammed with this nonsense if you just don't go along with the causes of changing climate that they tell you. And what they're telling you, it's all your fault. Anthropogenic climate change, it's all your fault. Even when they admit, and they have to admit after years and years of spraying us, that they're doing all this testing, they call this testing, this heavy, heavy spraying, geoengineering, and into the atmospheres. And we never have normal weather since they started this in 1998. They admit themselves that if they started heavy spraying to geo-engineered atmosphere, they couldn't just stop it. There'd be mayhem. But it also means, obviously, that going into it, building up this high-level, permanent cloud around the planet, as they're talking about it in the stratosphere, getting into that loading dose, once they achieve the perfect amount in the air, then getting to that stage, you get lots of upheavals at the same time. But no, it's your fault. It's your fault that you notice it. It's your fault you see the planes spraying the sky, and it's your fault that you think they got something to do with it. Because the whole agenda, and you'll see all the far left and all the middle and all the rest of them all on board because they're told to be on board with it. Because the whole future of mankind on the planet, to get the whole end of the nation state, the end of personal individual rights, as to where you want to live and so on. You must give it all up for a regimented collectivist system run by your betters, the people who are being appointed and trained in their pseudosciences that you'll have to eventually worship. You're seeing what really was the real old Soviet system, which was exported to the West. You're seeing it on steroids. Because this is where they'd hoped eventually down the road to go in all their fantasies. But so did all the socialists, where it was communists or the national socialists. That was the difference between the two. One was national socialists, the other one was international socialists. And there's a couple other differences too as to who would dominate it. But that's still on the go. And they got these people who, there are people definitely, and you've met them, who just know how everybody else should live. I'm sure you've met some in your lifetime. They'll know exactly what you should think. And I've met a few, actually, who people I like. You give them a couple of drinks, and they'll have a little disagreement with you here and there, and there's no argument, there's no raging argument, but they can't let it go. And when you say, okay, we can agree, disagree, it's no problem, which it isn't for me, but they'll say, oh no, they can't let it go. They're going to try to get you to agree with them on something. Well, if these people had, say, a different place to be born or something, or born into the right family with a bit of edgy power, they could probably be up there telling you how to live. And they would be. And what you'll find is, if you give them that kind of power, they're utterly intolerant of any other opinions or any other way of being. And that's what you're seeing coming in. You wouldn't believe what really does go on. And remember, the whole Agenda 21 idea, the Limits to Growth Club of Rome, these are all connected groups. There's a simple pyramid system of all these different groups, the ones at the very, very top. Some of them I've mentioned in the past. Not from my guessing games, but from their own books and so on. You can go into all the different groups that stem right back to the groups that came out of London, World Wildlife Fund, Sierra Club, all with the same people on top, by the way. And long before that, the names that you heard in your lifetime, going back into the 1800s with some of them. And the big mantra from them all, and from the Julian Huxleys and the rest of them, was just, there's too many people if they keep breeding like this. Meaning too many of the wrong people if they keep breeding like this. And the answer now is to end the nation state, because I always wanted that, a global system, reducing the population by every means possible. And I mean by every means possible. And it's coming, it's here actually. And there's no fanfare about it as folk just drop dead all over the place with cancers and getting younger and younger all the time. It's just quite normal. It's a new normal. And that's because the big masters of the world who own it all know what's causing it all, and they're not worried about it at all. If they were worried about it, there'd be a hue and cry, what's killing our livestock? And that's all of us. But you can go into the books yourselves and you can find out how blatant those behind the agenda have been in the past, at least their front men and women, who after World War I came out, once they established the League of Nations, talking about the end of the nation state. And the Fabian Society, of course, that was funded by some of the richest people on the planet to supposedly look after the rights of the working class by telling the working class what to do. And they were all in bed. They were communists on one side, but they were multimillionaire communists. And you won't find that very unusual. You've got to get rid of this working class nonsense that you've been fed, and let the working class do all the work, and those who came up with the plans just reap the harvest. This is quite simple. But you find that H.G. Wells, that was a front man, a propagandist for the Lord Alfred Milner group, and the clique who knew each other very, very well. He knew Rudyard Kipling too, who came out with his own writings about the empire and the empire's role in the world, going towards a world governmental system. And H.G. Wells talked about the League of Nations, where it says this will be held to be the start of the end of the nation state, a form of world government headquarters, where the bureaucrats of departments in government, they really run the show, keep it going, put it that way. They could converse with each other and go over to meet each other and make little deals and sign things, as we call them Sherpas today too, as they come up and draft up things for amalgamations and bypass the political side of debate. That hasn't changed. Now it's pretty wide open today, how it all works. Only because there's masters above them. Believe you me, if the richest people on this planet, very old money, were a bit upset at all about what's happening today, it would be stopped immediately in any quarter. Now, one of the reasons why people are getting really rushed through the agenda at the moment is because they are the end product. The generation right now, we're the end product of massive entertainment, brainwashing, titillation through all kinds of things, and debauched as well. If you actually watch television, you can't help but be debauched. That's what it's there for. Until every value you had, getting back to old morality, is out the window and stomped upon or flushed down the toilet. See, it really is. And you know it, and I know it, and I don't watch TV. But that's why the reason is so easy to rush it through today. Because there's no unified morality on any particular area to stand up for. Most folk, in fact, are so contaminated. And that's what Bezmenov said, Yuri Bezmenov, who came over from the KGB. He says the KGB has nothing to do, really, and it's not like spies and James Bond. He says the real system of spy work is to do with subversion of the culture, which means the morality as well of the people. And they couldn't believe it when he came over in the 1970s, in the 80s, how incredibly well had succeeded, starting with the youth, of course, and actually their parents too, because there wasn't they'd been doing that before World War II, and running all the industries and the culture industry with their agents in the States and elsewhere, and pushing the same thing. And literally, he said that once they're completely debauched, contaminated is the term they use. All sides use that term. Once it's happened, then people cannot stand up in a unified form to fight off anything, even an invasion. Think about that. That's why everything's happening today. And that's also why during the 90s and even before, you had all these movies in the early 2000s, all these movies coming out about a dystopian future with rubble everywhere in previously civilized places, people living in all kinds of rubble, a small minority living very well, and a massive army, all black-clad and faceless, that kept everything under their heel, basically. That was to be the future. And no one said, why are they churning out all these same type of movies, one after the other? Well, here you are, you're coming into it. Or terrorism. Remember, I read the articles from the so-called chiefs of different countries appointed for anti-terrorism, and they all said the same thing, because they all read the same scripts and are told to say the same things to the people. Get used to it. because you're going to have it for the rest of your life and beyond. This is a new method of completely controlling everyone as we go through this transformation. Remember, the century of change, the 21st century, where all this has to be accomplished. And you're all stuck in your crowded cities. The nation state is to wither away. And that's what Marx said too, just coincidentally, isn't it? The nation state would wither away. And I read the articles too from the think tanks for NATO countries, for the military, and they were talking to the same thing about the city-state and the end of nations. That's the future. And you'll all be, we're all classified already completely. Everything, right down to folks' DNA now. I mean, they know all too if you've ever had a blood test taken or samples taken by police or whoever happens to be, or given it voluntarily, or even for basically registering your children through the Freemasonry groups. And they're the greatest ones for getting the fingerprints of children and remember the Masonic chip for having the children's clothing chip and all that. And they're still pushing for all to go even further.